So Theresa May's left office. And I finally can talk about her premiership and her whole Brexit hankering. You're listening to Around the World Today, here on Real Terrier Radio Podcasts.
Podcasts brought to you by Real Terrier Radio. Around the World Today, here on Real Terrier Radio.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Around the World Today, here on Real Terrier Radio. So, we have a new Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, people. Boris Johnson. Now, this isn't a podcast about Boris Johnson. For starters, it would be a little hard to critique Boris Johnson's premiership when he's only served at least 35 hours at this point. So, what we're going to do is look at the last Premier. So the last Prime Minister was Theresa May. She took office on the 13th of July 2016 and left office on the 24th of July 2019. She served as this country's Prime Minister for just over 3 years. Now, what has happened? How would Theresa May go down in history? How will history judge her? How will history judge Brexit? How will history judge her negotiations? How are we judging it right now? We don't know. History, we don't know what's going to happen. Her deal may have been the only deal that the EU are going to give, and I'm a little worried about this because, today we've had a new Prime Minister. Yesterday actually, but they've said for the last 2 days they're not going to renegotiate. So maybe Theresa May's deal, is it? So we're going to start, and we're going to look at this in years. So we're going to start with 2016. What did she do? She only had 6 months. She didn't even have 6 months. I think it was 5.5, because with the breaks as well, because she had summer holidays and stuff. Okay, so remember, Theresa May served in the Cameron Shadow Cabinet and the Cameron government up until 2016. Was Theresa May really David Cameron's girl? Was David Cameron still pulling the strings of Theresa May, its Home Secretary? But hey, now let's look at her as Prime Minister. So her leadership election was on the 30th of June. And she announced her candidacy. Now, Cameron resigned because of the Brexit vote, where the UK voted by 52% to leave. He couldn't bring the leadership that we needed by all accounts, and we needed strong leadership with a positive vision for the country's future. Considering we're in the same boat as we were in 3 years ago today, I very much doubt that we had strong leadership and a positive vision for the country's future. Considering we have had a further Prime Minister forced on the electorate by the Conservative Party, like we did 3 years ago, I don't think we've had the positive vision or the strong leadership again. Okay, so she brought back Remain. We all knew this, So anyway, she won the leadership contest against Andrea Leadsom. She was appointed on the 13th of July 2016, 2 days after becoming the leader of the Conservative Party. She was appointed Prime Minister by the Queen, and she was the second female Prime Minister. That's quite good, do you know what I mean? She addressed the world media as she went in to office, and I'm about to play you what she said.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted. In David Cameron, I follow in the footsteps of a great modern Prime Minister. Under David's leadership, the government stabilised the economy, reduced the budget deficit, and helped more people into work than ever before. But David's true legacy is not about the economy, but about social justice. From the introduction of same-sex marriage to taking people on low wages out of income tax altogether, David Cameron has led a one-nation government, and it is in that spirit that I also plan to lead. Because not everybody knows this, but the full title of my party is the Conservative and Unionist Party. And that word unionist is very important to me. It means we believe in the Union, the precious, precious bond between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But it means something else that is just as important. It means we believe in a union not just between the nations of the United Kingdom, but between all of our citizens, every one of us, whoever we are and wherever we're from. That means fighting against the burning injustice that if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white. If you're a white working class boy, you're less likely than anybody else in Britain to go to university. If you're at a state school, you're less likely to reach the top professions than if you're educated privately. If you're a woman, you will earn less than a man. If you suffer from mental health problems, there's not enough help to hand. If you're young, you'll find it harder than ever before to own your own home. But the mission to make Britain a country that works for everyone means more than fighting these injustices. If you're from an ordinary working class family, life is much harder than many people in Westminster realise. You have a job, but you don't always have job security. You have your own home, but you worry about paying the mortgage. You can just about manage, but you worry about the cost of living and getting your kids into a good school. If you're one of those families, if you're just managing, I want to address you directly. I know you're working around the clock. I know you're doing your best, and I know that sometimes life can be a struggle. The government I lead will be driven not by the interests of the privileged few, but by yours. We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives. When we take the big calls, we'll think not of the powerful, but you. When we pass new laws, we'll listen not to the mighty, but to you. When it comes to taxes, we'll prioritise not the wealthy, but you. When it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you. We are living through an important moment in our country's history. Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us. That will be the mission of the government I lead. And together, we will build a better Britain.
So that was in 2016. Should we talk about some of those injustices that she just had to fight? Well, actually, she did very little. She kept on the austerity. She kept on making cuts. She kept on with the universal credit and the bedroom tax implemented by her predecessor, David Cameron. She borrowed more money than David Cameron. She had a go at Jeremy Corbyn about strong and stable leadership. However, the only strong and stable leadership she was able to bring was to her marriage, not to the Conservative and Unionist Party or to the country. It makes you wonder, why? How? What the hell? But what can you do? No. We have Theresa May. She has gone. We have a new Prime Minister. She had, I believe, at the last count, she had the highest amount of cabinet resignations in a term as Prime Minister than anyone has had. She served 2 terms. So her first ministry was, she approved the Hinkley Point C nuclear station, a project which Theresa May, before as Home Secretary, objected to. So she changed her mind. She then... basically, she changed her mind. She believed that we were selling our national security down the Swanee to China. However, more comes into this because her government awarded a 5G contract to China. So much for selling our security down the river. So she contradicted herself then. On July 20th, she attended her first Prime Minister's question since taking office. Then afterwards made her first overseas trip as Prime Minister, visiting Berlin, with talks with the Angela Merkel chap from Germany. During the visit, May said that she would not trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the process withdrawing from the EU, before 2017, suggesting that it would take time for the UK to negotiate a stable and ordinary departure from the EU. Also in her first term, she supported Saudi Arabia's led intervention in Yemen, supplying Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, which was accused of war crimes against Yemen, insisting, she did, that Britain's close relationship with Saudi Arabia was helping keep people from the streets of Britain, keeping the streets of Britain safe. On the 21st of January 2017, following the inauguration of Donald Trump as President of the United States, the White House announced that May would meet the President on the 27th of January, making her the first foreign leader to meet Trump since he took office on the 20th of January. In a joint conference, May, and I remember this conference because they were holding hands as they were walking down. That was lovely, wasn't it? But in this conference, May indicated the interest of an increased trade deal between the United States and the UK. She also affirmed the desire to maintain the American involvement in NATO. May criticised by members of major parties, including her own, for refusing to condemn Trump's Executive Order 13769, as well as for inviting Trump to a state visit with the Queen. On January 2017, when it came to light that a Trident test had malfunctioned in June 2016, May refused to confirm whether she knew about it or knew about the incident when she addressed Parliament. Then, in May, in 2017's budget, continued the government policies of freezing benefits. Then we had the 2017 general election in April. So on April 18th, she went to the Parliament and she asked for an early general election. She got it. Because she needed a super majority and fixed-term parliaments didn't allow her to do this. Unveiling her Conservative manifesto, I just want to play you her speech from her about Corbyn, a couple of her speeches, and I will be playing them for you. But she unveiled her manifesto at Halifax. May promised a mainstream government that would deliver for the mainstream Britain. It proposed to balance the budget by 2025, raise spending on the NHS by 8 billion per year, and on schools by 4 billion per annum by 2022. She wanted So, where were we, people? General election 2017. Did you know that Theresa May was the only Prime Minister to ever be found in contempt of Parliament? Hello? So yeah, anyway, we're going back to the election. She just had the election. She won, basically, with a small majority. And she had to show up her position because she only won, like, the most votes. She didn't win anything big. She had to do a deal with the DUP. Anyway, next. So, 2 weeks after the state opening of Parliament, May ordered a full public inquiry into the blood scandal. For this, she was widely praised, as successive governments have been going back to the 1980s had refused such an inquiry. Some, though, speculated that May had simply been forced to announce the inquiry after a group legal action and news of fresh evidence were brought by Jason Evans. Additionally, Andy Burnham had threatened to take evidence to the police if the inquiry were not announced. With over 1,000 core participants, the infected blood inquiry is the biggest public inquiry to ever be held in the United Kingdom. In November 2017, May said that the actions of the Myanmar army and police against the Rohingya people, the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar, looks like an ethnic cleansing, and according to May, it's something for which the Burmese authorities, and especially the military, must take full responsibility. From 2017's general election to December 2017, May suffered no defeats in whipped votes in the House of Commons, and on the 13th of December 2017, May lost a vote on the EU withdrawal bill by 309 votes to 305, due to 11 Conservatives voting against their own government and party, including Stephen Hammond, who was the then Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party. May accused Russia of threatening the international order and seeking to weaponize information and deploying its state-run media organizations to plant fake stories. She mentioned Russia's meddling in German federal election in 2017 after the German government officials and security experts said that there was no Russian interference. May promised to confront China on its human rights, but praised the communist-controlled media for sidestepping human rights in China during her first official visit to the country. The Global Times said, for the Prime Minister, the losses outweigh the gains. If she appeases the British media at the cost of the visit, friendly's atmosphere. In May 2018, during a 3-day state visit to the UK, Turkish President Erdogan, May declared that Britain is a true friend of Turkey, but added that it is important that in our defence of democracy, which has been facing extraordinary processes from the failed coup, instability across the border from Syria, and from the Kurdish terrorism. Turkey does not lose sight of its values it is seeking to defend. So, back to December 2018. So a motion was passed by MPs by 301 to 293 votes that the May government was found in contempt of Parliament, for the first government to be found in contempt of Parliament in history. The vote triggered by the government The vote was triggered by the government failing to lay before Parliament any legal advice on the proposed withdrawal agreement on the terms of the UK's departure of the European Union. After a humble address for a return was unambiguously agreed by the House of Commons. On the 13th of November 2018, the government then agreed to publish the full advice for Brexit. That was given to the Prime Minister by the Attorney General during the negotiations with the European Union. So, yeah. So we're up until December of last year so far. So we're 6 months away from the end of this horrible story. So December 12th, 2018. May faced a vote of no confidence in her leadership over the opposition to her negotiated Brexit deal from the Conservative Party. After a number of Conservative MPs exceeded the 48 no-confidence letter threshold of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady required for a ballot to be held. So a vote of no confidence. May won this, with 200 Conservative MPs voting for her, compared to the 117 voting against. As part of her speech to the Parliamentary Conservative Party before the no-confidence vote was opened, it was reported that May considered that she would step down as Prime Minister after delivering Brexit, and would not lead the Conservative Party in the next general election in exchange for the MPs voting to have confidence in her leadership, so that she would be able to keep the party, Parliament and the UK stable during the final stages of Brexit. May later confirmed this to the BBC's political editor, Laura Koensberg, after meeting EU leaders, including Jean-Claude Juncker, in Brussels. On 17th of December 2018, in the House of Commons, the leader of the opposition and Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, tabled a motion of no confidence in May's Premiership, citing May's refusal to set the date for the meaningful vote on Brexit, the deal, before Christmas, and instead push it back to mid-January. The following day, the government refused to allow time for a motion to be debated. John Bercow, Speaker of the House of Commons, confirmed that they were under no obligation to do so. Following the defeat of May's Brexit deal on the 15th of January 2019, Corbyn tabled a motion of no confidence in the government to be voted on by Parliament the following evening. The motion was defeated 325 votes to 306, a majority of 19. Now, she won 19 votes. She lost 1 vote. Do you know what I mean? People who voted against her voted for her this time. So 1 minute, a week before, they were voting that they had no confidence in her. Then they're voting to say that they have confidence in her. You know, you gotta ask yourself. On the 15th of January 2019, this year, May's government was defeated in the House of Commons by a margin of 230 votes. By a margin of 230 votes, 202 in favour, 432 opposed. A vote on her deal to leave the European Union. It was the largest majority against the United Kingdom government in history. On the 14th of February of the same year, May suffered another Commons defeat after MPs voted by 303 to 258, a majority of 45, against the motion endorsing the government's Brexit negotiating strategy. On the 12th of March, May was defeated again in the Commons by 149 votes, this time 242 in favour, 391 against, on her latest deal, after she secured the last-minute concessions from the EU. On the 29th of March, May was again defeated by 58 votes in the Commons, 286 in favour, 344 against, on the withdrawal deal, but not the political declaration. So, she resigned. So we're up until March of this year. How could it all go from her being the stable one, the one that's going to sort the country out, keep us on a straight line to the one who put us back to where we were 40 years before. Anyways, on 27th of March 2019, at a meeting of the 1922 committee, May confirmed that she would not lead the UK in the next stage of the Brexit negotiations, meaning that she was expected to resign after the third meaningful vote, if it had passed successfully. However, the date there was no date stated, and her reported wording was ambiguous, and thus carried no binding force. On the 29th of March, the third meaningful vote was defeated, and while May did not state anything in regards to standing down, Corbyn stated that if May could not find an alternative to her deal, she must go. Not at an immediate date, but in the future. But now, not in an immediate date in the future, but now. Well, he was right. Do you know what I mean? Then on the 22nd of April, it was announced that leaders of 70 Conservative associations had signed a petition calling for a vote of no confidence in the party rules of an extraordinary general meeting that must be convened if one is demanded by 65 associations. The non-binding vote to be determined by 800 of the party's senior officials would be the first such instance that has occurred. On the 24th of April, the party's 1922 committee ruled out changing the leadership challenge rules, but it is clear that Graham Brady asked for clarity on May, when May would step down from office. On the 24th of May, she confirmed that she would resign as Conservative Party leader on the 7th of June, stating it would be clear to me that it is in the best interest of the country for a new Prime Minister to lead the effort. She continued to serve as Prime Minister until she tendered a resignation on the 24th of June. Thus continued with the July, 24th of July. Then it continued with the arrival of Boris Johnson, who was elected Prime Minister by the party. By constitutional convention, May did not step down until she assured the Queen that Johnson would be able to command confidence of the House of Commons. In one of May's last Prime Minister's questions, Barry Sherman, the Labour MP for asking her to stay in office, a Labour MP now, asked her to stay in office, probably because he knew that they could win. Public opinion towards May, I don't know, even her foreign policy was a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Erratical? Hypocritical? But here's a speech from her election. So this is what she said directly after the election, before she had to go cap in hand to the DUP.
I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, and I will now form a government that can provide certainty and lead Britain forward at this critical time for our country. This government will guide the country through the crucial Brexit talks that begin in just 10 days, and deliver on the will of the British people by taking the United Kingdom out of the European Union. It will work to keep our nation safe and secure by delivering the change that I set out following the appalling attacks in Manchester and London, cracking down on the ideology of Islamist extremism and all those who support it, and giving the police and the authorities the powers they need to keep our country safe. The government I lead will put fairness and opportunity at the heart of everything we do, so that we will fulfil the promise of Brexit together over the next 5 years, build a country in which no one and no community is left behind. A country in which prosperity and opportunity are shared right across this United Kingdom. What the country needs more than ever is certainty. And having secured the largest number of votes and the greatest number of seats in the general election, it is clear that only the Conservative and Unionist Party has the legitimacy and ability to provide that certainty by commanding a majority in the House of Commons. As we do, we will continue to work with our friends and allies in the Democratic Unionist Party in particular. Our two parties have enjoyed a strong relationship over many years, and this gives me the confidence to believe that we will be able to work together in the interests of the whole United Kingdom. This will allow us to come together as a country and channel our energies towards a successful Brexit deal that works for everyone in this country, securing a new partnership with the EU which guarantees our long-term prosperity. That's what people voted for last June. That's what we will deliver. Now let's get to work.
She said, let's get to work. She still technically was Prime Minister. That was a whole publicity stunt. She didn't actually need to go and see the Queen because she was still the Prime Minister. She won the most power, the most votes in Parliament. That whole thing was a publicity stunt for the sake of her polls. At that point, before the election seat, she was polling a hell of a lot higher than Jeremy Corbyn. Then the election came and she couldn't campaign. She lost the election. Jeremy Corbyn nearly beat her. He won the most seats. He won the most gains, where she won the most number of seats. So they both won that election. There was no clear winner. Now, this is us talking about Theresa May. Now, we've heard some of the stuff about her and her premiership. Now, how do you think history is going to judge her in time? Will history say that Theresa May was a great Prime Minister? Or will history say that Theresa May was the worst Prime Minister that this country has had since Neville Chamberlain? It's funny because whenever there's a problem in British history, and the Conservatives have always been in power, when there's a problem or a major event or something to do with the military, the Conservatives seem to be in power. But because they make cuts to military budgets, stupid stuff happens. Like the Falklands War, you look at it, well, the year before, they made military cuts. You look at what happened in Iran last weekend, a British tanker being taken. Well, there was meant to be a Royal Navy ship, but what they failed to tell people is that Royal Navy ship was protecting 50 other British ships in the area. So how can one ship in a sea, that's quite vast, protect 50 ships? It's quite impossible to do. But the reason there was only one ship in the area is because the Conservative government since 2010 has made major cuts to our military spending, our military hardware and our military personnel. So they make problems for themselves. World War II. The Conservative government were letting the Germans look at our Air Force. The Germans knew our air defences because the Conservatives opened Pandora's box for them. And then Ackley went to do his little non-appeasal deal. Make of it what you want, but whenever there's been a problem, Suez, that's another Conservative problem. Actually, this was more to do with the French lying to us, but hey. The problem is, they're not good at defence, and they're not good at security, and they're not good... These people, if they weren't in politics, do you really think they would be in proper working jobs? Do you really think they would be sweeping floors or working in McDonald's for low minimum wage? Or even, cutting gardens? They really wouldn't. And I'm loving it to people who are currently supporting the current leader, Boris Johnson. Especially if you live in Wales. Because I know actually this is the only bit about Boris Johnson that you're going to get from me. Yeah, I may complain now and again, but I'm going to play you something about Boris. This is what he said in about 2012 about the Welsh. Now, if you couldn't hear that, Boris Johnson, our current Prime Minister, refers to Wales as in England. Well, no, Wales is in Wales, and Wales is a part of the United Kingdom that's in Great Britain. Now, Boris seems to think that we're all English. No, I'm Welsh, my dear, and so are most of the people who live in Wales. What can you do? But it's exciting times. I look forward to another exciting podcast. Now, we're going to talk about the Brexit deal next week on episode 10. So this is a 2-part episode. You're listening to part 1. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, people.
Podcasts brought to you by Real Terrio Radio. Around the world today here on Real Terrio Radio.